All right, we are back on a Monday, and as we do on Mondays, it's good to check in with our course outline for our digital media and imaging. And today is the 21st. It's the last day that we meet before the last day to withdraw for courses. So that means you're here, you're in the class, you're committed. We're through to the end. So we're in week 13, which means there's only 2 more weeks of classes after this week, and then our finals, right? So we have our second half of presentations today. I'm going to introduce our last assignment that I grade, or our last 3-point assignment, which is going to be digital painting. The assignment after that is going to be your final project worth 10 points that's graded by class critique. There's a question of the day that's part of that unit. I'll be introducing that later. And then starting a week from today, we'll start on our conceptual assignment. You can think of it as assignment 8 or just your final assignment, right? And we will get 1 full class period, 2 full class periods, 3 full class periods to work on that assignment, but it needs to be printed before the beginning of class on May 7th, because that's when it will be posted along with an art statement for student review. And then we have our finals week. Our final is going to be on Wednesday, May 14th from 12 to 2:30. Note that it is not on Monday, so we do not meet on Monday of finals week. You might have another final during our usual class time on the Monday of finals week. All right. And it's a slightly unusual time. Starts at 12 instead of 12:30. That's because every final, every period across the district is given 2.5 hours for their final exam. So they want to make sure it all stacks out. And you will not have any conflicts with any other classes as long as we have it at this time. And it will be in this room. Also, by the end, you want to have at least 5 pieces printed. So those can be the 3 from your midterm and then 2 others. One is probably going to be your final project, right? And then something else. So that might be your spot illustration. It might be your full poster. So as we're finishing up our posters, we just turned in assignment 6. I want to use it as an example to show you the difference between fine art printing and commercial printing, right? So let's see. Boom, boom, boom. So this is what commercial printing looks like, right? So this is what's called CMYK color separation. It is made of 4 inks. So if I'm going to print my design, here I'll pull up the file that I finished in class and submitted, just the JPEG poster I submitted. Right? This was it, right? And if we zoom in on it, we see lots and lots of different pixel colors. And we have a fine art printer, our Epson P800s. They can print up to 17 by 22 inches, which is a pretty small limitation in terms of printing size, but they print with 9 inks and they print with 2,600 something dots per inch. So we get lots and lots of color mixing and really, really fine prints that will give us all these textures and all these illusions. But if I wanted to print this professionally, commercially, in mass production for like a poster or an album cover or a textbook or a book cover illustration, then this image, my beautiful work, will get reduced to 4 inks, right? I'll put it on a white background so you can see. You do not need to do this, but you need to understand it for our learning outcomes for the class. Understanding, as the learning outcome states, CMYK theory, which is how these 4 inks can make all the thousands of colors that we can see in a print. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to edit fill with white. All right, so this is our white piece of paper. That's how you print, right? And then on top of that, the first thing we're going to print, if it's a professional lithography press, which look like this, right? That's a 4-color offset lithography press printing a color test sheet, right? It's fun to watch video of them because they can roll the different inks at different stages, and they're working off of 4 different plates. And it's called offset printing. It gives you high quality, it's versatile, it's cost effective, and it's consistent. But it is time consuming to set up the print job. You're going to see why. It's limited in its customization because you're only printing with 4 standard inks. And it's not ideal for small runs because it's expensive if it's a small run. One printing plate professionally, which is 30 by 40 inches, costs $4,000 just to make the plate. So for a 4-color, full color poster, that's 30 by 40 inches or smaller, you're talking $16,000 just to get the plates, right, for a basic poster. Now you can usually get maybe 4 posters out of a 30 by 40 job, but that's still $4,000 per poster before you've printed a single one, just to get the film work for it, onto aluminum plates so that it can be printed. But once you've done that, that's a big startup cost, right? Then all you're paying for is inks and paper. And so you can print thousands of them. And the more you print, the cheaper they are per unit. But if you're not going to print at least 500 of something, you don't go through this printing process. You do more on-demand printing, which is what we do for your portfolios. And then environmental concerns. Yes, these are old machines. This was started in the 1930s. And they are loud, they are fast, they are powerful, but they are not energy efficient. So just to show a little video, this is what one of those presses just kind of sounds like and how fast they go. Now this is one that just does 1 print color at a time. This is how newspapers do it for just the black and white edition, right? But this is actually a fine art printing press. They're just doing the yellow layer, which is usually the first layer that gets printed commercially. Okay, so now let's go to my example. And we print the yellow layer first. And why isn't it showing up? I have no idea. Oh, I know why. Let's set this to normal mode. All right. So the yellow layer, I have quite a bit of yellow in my design. These are the yellow inks, but ink can only ever be fully there or fully not there, right? You can't thin it out on a printing press like you can with an ink wash painting. So the way we thin it out is through mechanical separation, through dots. And the angle of those dots for yellow on mechanical reproduction is 0 degrees. Which can also be said as 90 degrees, right? So it's horizontal and vertical. You see how the dots line up? Horizontal and vertical. If it's a really light yellow, the dots are really tiny. If it's a really heavy yellow, the dots are thicker, or the dots are inverted. So the dots are actually empty space, and all the space around the dot is filled. And when it's solid yellow, it's just full bleed. It's all filled with yellow ink. So this gives us light yellow, kind of middle yellow, a dark yellow. See how big the dots get there. Really dark yellow, and then darkest yellow. Now it's not really dark, it's like intensity. So when we zoom out, you can see those different tones of yellow. And the strongest tone is just where the yellow is 100%. Next, we print the magenta, and we print the magenta on top of the yellow. And the magenta is at a slightly different angle. It's at 15 degrees. And that's what causes the offset. So you see that the magenta doesn't land right on top of the yellow dots. Instead, it is slightly offset. So that we're seeing a little bit of the yellow and we're seeing a little bit of the magenta. And the inks in actual reproduction are not at 100%. So I imitate that with this opacity. So you get a little bit of a bleed where they overlap. But most of the color mixing is not where they overlap. It's our eye mixing it optically from a distance. So now that looks like orange because that's a mix of the yellow and the magenta. Does that kind of make sense? Doesn't it kind of look like there's blue? There isn't. That's just the color theory of our eye reading magenta, that's only magenta, on white as looking blue because our eye is kind of adjusting the whole color value to being mostly yellow. But then when we add blue, you'll start to see more spectrum color. Now, obviously, my design has a lot of blue in it. And blue traditionally goes on top of magenta. I have the blue at 100% right now. Let's take that opacity of the ink down so you can see how the blue lines up. And the blue is at 115 degrees or 75 degrees. They're both the same thing. Maybe. Let's just go with 75 degrees. And so you can see how those now line up. Now we have cyan, magenta, and yellow making our print. And this is all the color that is possible in a 4-color offset lithography press, our commercial printing press. But we can add another ink, because what's missing from this? Black, right? Black is not a color, but black is the final ink that can give us kind of clarity to our color, right? And it can be added into different colors. I don't have a lot of black in my design except for the outlines, right? But you can see it. I'll isolate the black layer just on its own. You can see how it's used to kind of tone the other colors. This is with halftone dots. That's the most common way of separating cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K is for black, so we don't confuse it with blue. Now, this is what I like to do. I like to take this formulation, and I like to kind of customize it a little bit, which you can't do on professional presses unless you're the operator of the press. But my digital manipulation, I actually like to print with cyan first, and I print it at 100% because I get that intensity of blue, but I put it on the bottom, and then I print with yellow next. So if we build it from the bottom this way, this is what my cyan would look like for this. This is what my yellow with cyan would look like. This is what my magenta would look like on top of that. And you'll notice all the colors, wherever there's black line art, all the colors are at 100% underneath that. They're pretty strong. Actually, the blue is not as strong as I would expect. But then you put the black on top, and then it all optically mixes together. Why isn't it solid black here? Well, this is where I had a color hold in the original design, and this was more the solid black. Then I take this, I put it all in a group, and then I layer it onto my original. So this is my original. And now I'm going to add the CMYK color separation. And then I'm going to individually register each one. So I can use my move tool, and I can move. Oops, I want to be on this layer. I want to move the black layer up a little bit to match underneath. I want to take the pink layer, move it up a little bit. This is called registering. Take the yellow layer. Looks pretty good. And take the blue layer and kind of line it all up. Sometimes it can be fun to intentionally misregister. That's when prints are done so fast that they don't line up exactly. And you'll have like a little bit. I have a little bit of the yellow misregistered there, so let me move that up a little bit more. There we go. And I do this for the kind of hand-printed vintage effect, so I don't mind slight misregistering. Okay, now that's obviously really strong. I don't want it to be at 100% normal. I want to take it down maybe to about 66. And then I want to blend it in, because right now it's just kind of darkening my original poster, right? But it gives it a lot more kind of oomph. But I'm going to take it down from normal mode to pin light. And what I like about pin light is that it will kind of sink those dots into the original inks or the original image. And then I can say, well, if that looks too strong,